You are listening to Adda, a Transfin podcast. These are 15-minute conversations to achieve a singular objective, that is, to intrigue, amuse, and nudge you into thinking a little deeper. Also listen in for some riveting icebreakers. Do subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google to get that nice little notification every time an episode goes live.
Hello everybody. Today we discuss two very diverse topics. First, we talk about why pandas make very efficient diplomats for China. And second, we discuss the nexus between healthcare institutions and tech giants. Hello Simi, what's up?
Hi Sam, I'm good. What's up with you, man?
I'm also very good. So how are you on this very beautiful morning?
It's nice. I mean, Republic Day is soon coming.
Yes, are you
a lot of traffic on the roads as usual.
And a lot of checkpoints and like the security has been amped up a lot.
Yeah, it has been.
Yeah, so Simi, tell me what do I have on my mind today? I don't know. So what's your favorite animal?
I remember saying frog when I was a kid.
Frog, why though?
I don't know. I think I was just fascinated with the way they jump and also the fact that they can live both in water and on land.
Okay, also, did you find them very delicious?
I've not eaten a frog, have you?
I have.
Where, in China?
In Vietnam, Simi, they're two very different countries.
Oops.
But yeah, frog meat is supposed to be very, very healthy and filled with calcium and protein apparently.
Oh, nice. Yes. Which is yours favorite animal?
I'm missing like tigers or panthers or lions. Cats, basically. I just really love cats. All kinds of cats.
Nice. I love the transition how you went from a lion, like the most ferocious cat, to a leopard.
I didn't even talk about leopards. Are you even listening?
You said a panther, right? You said something.
Yeah, I said panther and tiger.
And then then you come down to the most docile cat, which
domestic
is domestic
cats are not very tame. They're very, very wild and ferocious.
You might have just said a panda instead,
I love pandas. Pandas are bears, by the way.
Pandas are bears, by the way.
Yes, they
are. Very nice. Somehow I always associate a panda with a unicorn. I don't know. I just feel that both of these creatures are,
Fake. Except that pandas exist, you know that, right?
Yeah,
I think it's because pandas are like half white skin, and you always think of unicorns as also white skin. I think that's why you think of them as the same.
Maybe, I don't
or
know.
Perhaps you just haven't met either, so that's
Perhaps that.
Yeah. But pandas are very fascinating animals. They're very cute and fat and pretty, but also at the very same time, they are also symbols of Chinese geopolitical ambitions.
Oh, interesting.
Have you heard of the phrase panda diplomacy, Simi?
I think I have. I've read it somewhere. Did we write something on that recently?
My cover note, yes. You actually read what I write. That's
yes, I do sometimes. Why not?
Sometimes that's better than I can ask for. Great. Okay, so as of now, China has pandas on loan to 26 zoos in 18 countries.
On loan.
Okay. And the fact is, they don't come for free. So China charges around some amount of cash every year for these pandas. Can you guess what is the price of a pair of pandas for 1 year?
But is it like a gift or like a loan?
It's a loan. So
it's a loan.
Yeah. What do you think is the price of a pair of pandas for a year?
I don't know, like $1,000 or something.
$1 million.
$1 million. My God.
It's a lot of money. Yes.
What justifies this huge, like massive amount? It's huge.
Because pandas are very cute and very amazing animals, and if you have pandas at your zoo, there will be an obvious uptick in the amount of tickets sold.
Right.
But at the very same time, it also in a way amps up the image of your city your town.
But then that's the only purpose, right? As in for display at a zoo, right? It's nothing else.
For those who loan the pandas, yes. But then those who are loaning the pandas, in this case the Chinese government, they have other ulterior motives as well.
Okay.
So basically, the first time that pandas were loaned in this so-called panda diplomacy was in the 7th century CE, when the Chinese empress sent out 2 pandas to Japan as a sign of friendship. And now fast forward today, the idea of panda diplomacy has evolved to take into a whole other level, so to speak.
Pandas are endemic to
China, yes.
Right?
Yes. So basically, China
not
is the only country.
Else?
No, China is the only country that has pandas.
Okay.
So basically, a panda diplomacy in the the modern age began in the 1950s when the Communist Party sent out pandas as gifts to only allies. And back then, this meant only countries like, let's say, the Soviet Union or North Korea. And then came the 70s when China became more open politically with the West. And then pandas were sent out as signs of ties and bonds to even countries like the UK and the USA.
But until
right?
then, everything was for free, right? It was just a symbol of, say, peace or friendship or allies or something.
More or less, yes, more or less. But then came the 80s when China in a way discovered capitalism, right? Since then, pandas have been sent out to other places on Earth, but then in exchange for money.
Okay.
And then soon, in its fourth phase, panda diplomacy took a whole other dimension when it became a symbol of conservation. Even now, pandas are on the logo of the World Wildlife Fund.
Yeah.
And today, pandas are far more than just simple animals being sent out to other countries as signs of ties or bonds, right? If you have a list of countries that China has sent pandas out to, and then you have a second list of countries that China has trade deals with, these two lists overlap quite a bit.
Of course.
And then, Simi, if you have a third list of those countries on Earth which have a lot of uranium,
reserves.
Yes, uranium reserves. Then
I can see
in that case, all three lists will overlap quite a bit as well. Nice. So as of now, pandas are also a symbol of China's growing soft power in the world. Yeah, that's very interesting because it's like a very amazing way in which a very simple, cute animal can translate to so much more than just that.
This just reminds me of this one Quartz article I was reading, and they talk about how animals have also been used as spies. Like I remember about this news where a pigeon was captured somewhere near the Pakistan border, saying there was a spy. And
pigeon. A pigeon being a spy.
Yeah.
My God, are you serious?
Yeah.
I will never see pigeons the same way ever again.
Sure.
You just ruined pigeons for me.
That has happened also with whales. I think in Russia, a whale was captured. A couple of fishermen found a whale with, I think, a GoPro on it. Something like that.
Whoa.
And it was unusually friendly. That was the claim, actually. I don't remember the exact article, but it said that the whale was behaving in an exceptionally friendly manner. So they assumed that it was trained for
being a spy. Well, in that case, it would be a very, very bad spy.
Good one.
Fun fact to me, do you know the Chinese word for panda?
I don't know, Susanna, but let me guess, you must have looked it up as always before you entered the room, didn't you?
I don't like you. But so it is Xiong Mao.
Xiong Mao. Okay.
Mao, it's Xiong.
What does Xiong mean?
Xiong means bear. And Mao, I don't think it means Mao Zedong, but okay. Oh God, I just offended the Chinese government. Crap. Okay, so Simi, what else? What else do you have in mind? I mean, pandas and China, and what else? What do you want to talk about next?
I don't know, just China, talking about China every time. I remember we also began the first episode talking about China and the kind of influence it has on the global economy.
Hollywood, basically.
Hollywood, and generally, I'm just saying now extending to global economy and all of that, even diplomatic relationships. It's fascinating to see the kind of power China generally has over everywhere and everything. And I think
Pax Sinica, as they say, Pax Sinica.
Yeah.
So basically the 19th century was quote unquote Pax Britannica.
Yeah.
And then the past century has been Pax Americana. And some say that we are entering into Pax Sinica, which would be quite cynical.
Right. Oh wow, good one. That was nice, right? So just drawing from there, we can just make that as a segue to the next topic and talk about how tech giants, the kind of power which China has, it's very relatable to the kind of power which tech giants have. And governments generally, even in the Indian government, it has collected so much data from us from the very fact that Aadhaar cards, it has your biometric details, the government has your credit score, your geolocation is constantly tabbed. Like companies like Uber, even Swiggy, Zomato, they constantly have your geolocations, and all of these things are just with the government, right? And tech giants too. But another one institution or another one sector which possesses a lot of your very potentially personal data and very powerful data is healthcare institutions.
You mean like hospitals?
Yeah, I mean hospitals, research centers, all of them. Hospitals primarily, right? And I was reading this Wall Street Journal report and talked about how almost 80% of all medical records are now being digitalized. Right?
Is this in India or the West?
I'm assuming it's in the West because it was a Wall Street Journal article. And yeah. So 80% of all healthcare reports are being digitalized now, which gives tech giants a greater probability of accessing this. And we all already know, like Apple Watches. Did you watch the recent this one by Tim Cook, when he rolled out the new iPhone series?
You mean like the recent event?
Yeah, the
I
recent
did not
event.
see that. Sorry.
I mean, recent event, like when last happened.
What exactly happened?
So they talk about this one instance where the Apple Watch has progressed so much that it was able to detect increasing pace of heartbeat in a person and notify the person who was wearing it, and I think it also notified the person's family, like emergency contacts, about how the heartbeat was elevated. And he was in fact having a heart attack.
Oh my!
Right,
okay.
so it was just
Tim Cook was having a heart attack?
No, the person, like one of the users of Apple Watch was having a heart attack, and how potent the device has become. So so just focusing on how healthcare devices have increasingly advanced to just detect small things.
They become like small doctors themselves.
Yeah. So primarily it's the thing is that there's now an increasing nexus between these healthcare centers, if I may say, and the tech giants, right? So some of them have like a direct relationship, like I would say like an Apple Watch, or even if you have an Apple phone, you can directly give in your details. Like
that's Apple Health, right? Yeah.
Apple Health, right? Yeah. Exactly, the app, right? So it'll count your footsteps, heartbeat, and all of that. So, but there you like kind of voluntarily sign in, right?
Yeah.
And it's a direct relationship with the consumer. But in some other cases, like this one company based out of Silicon Valley called Stealth, which is spelled XEALTH.
Okay.
It has tie-ups with local hospitals and healthcare centers. So the thing is, if a doctor is treating, say, a pregnant woman, he or she will come up with like 10 to 15 products which the pregnant woman would want to use and say document it somewhere. And next time a similar case comes across, he would recommend, say, 4 of these, right? He would send across the patient digital list of say shopping items, like I know some pillow, some cream for the foot, or those stuff, and like some vitamins, multivitamins, like that. Now when the patient buys these products he or she is directed to Amazon or say a Lyft.
Okay, right? And that's where the tech giant comes into play.
Okay. So, since here it's not a direct relationship, but there's this middleman in play. It's Zelt, and it's via Zelt that Amazon is getting more sales.
Okay,
right?
And
so,
to do and then for this they will tap onto our personal information.
It's basically tapping onto a middleman, but it also has like a dedicated software its own, which is called Amazon Comprehend Medical, where say hospitals or doctors using Amazon Web Services, they input all the patient data on the cloud. Like Amazon Web Services, it's a cloud software of Amazon, right? So all this data is uploaded on the cloud. Now what Amazon does is processes all this data. After processing, I'll just give, say, there's a research going on cancer or say HIV or AIDS, right? So it's very easy to sieve all this data and come up with newer information and quicker information which can be easily accessed by researchers and healthcare centers again, right? So it's in those ways, and it's fascinating to see how the primary agenda here is always stated to provide better healthcare services and faster, better medication, come up with newer technologies, come up with
better research and all
that stuff.
And
all that stuff. But I mean, it's not fascinating, or it needs no divine intervention for anyone to tell us that eventually they would be monetizing all of this, right? I mean, they'll come up with more customized wearable devices, fitness devices, also drone delivery, right? I mean, just think of, I'm just reminded of what Apollo is doing in India right now. Apollo, it primarily began, I mean, it is a hospital chain, right? But now you also have Apollo pharmacies, right? And you can take like subscriptions for that, and assuming some prescriptions from Apollo hospitals would get like a discount or something at Apollo pharmacies. So that's the entire excess, right? They just want to keep it. And I was also speaking to a friend who told me, like, if you order stuff from 1mg, which is this online, like it's similar to, I think,
E-pharmacy, right?
E-pharmacy, right? So if you're ordering products from 1mg, it'll always give medicines from Apollo.
Okay,
right?
so they have an excess even
Yeah,
there.
so they have an access even there. So it's just how they are feeding on your very personal data and making
To
money
make
out
more
of
money.
it. Yes, of course. And
That's
also
quite immoral.
it
Blatantly immoral.
yeah, but another very important thing which comes out here is if they use, I mean, monetizing is still okay. I mean, you get it, right? It is a company at the end of the day. It's a business. You have to be profitable. But just think about it. It can, like, tech giants can actually sell your data to, say, the government or, say, private firms, right? Say if I have a history of cancer or my personal data can be shared with my employer, right? And I might not get a job, like, or my insurance, like the data can be shared with the insurance companies and the person can be denied an insurance, a health insurance.
Okay.
Right? So the repercussions are actually very, very grave. And it's, I mean, I'm not sure if you have heard about this Project Nightingale, which happened.
I think Google was involved in it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
I think I read something about it. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So Google kind of tied up with a chain of Catholic hospitals called Ascension, and
In the US.
In the US, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it kind of took out data of about 50 million patients without even the doctors or patients knowing. Right?
My
it's
God.
as bad as that.
That's like 1/6 of the population of the US.
Yeah.
More than 1/6. Yeah, almost.
It's huge, right? So
Uh-huh.
there was a huge probe, and Google got a lot of slack for it, but.
Any fines imposed per se?
Not really. I mean, there's this actually.
they got
there's this
away
one.
with
They kind of. I mean, I think it's still under scrutiny, but
Okay.
there are a couple of regulations in place called the one very famous one is HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability Act. But it was signed I think it was signed by Bush like really long back, and tech giants, they find just loopholes everywhere. So
It's pretty bad. I mean, is there any way out of this? I mean, in India, I don't think we have any rules about this. I mean, I don't think there's even a law about data security in India as of now. Is there?
Not really. They're trying to come up with things. I mean, BN Krishna, privacy policy, all of those. It kind of tries to handle, look into those areas. But again, I mean, it's still, this topic is something which is more relevant to US per se, but I mean, we can obviously see
It's going to come
coming
to
in.
India as well.
Of
It's gonna
course,
hit
of
home
course.
soon.
Very soon. I mean, it's just like a credit score, right? I mean, the government knows the credit score, you're denied. I mean, how many times am I denied a credit card all the time? Like loans, credit card.
How bad is your credit score?
I don't know, it's pathetic, right? But the fact that if the government knows what your medical history has been like, it can actually use it for a lot of purposes, right? I mean, it can be wrongly used. It can be actually, data can be sold.
Data is
the new oil. Yeah. Remember, right? So, Siddhartha, what do we learn today? Like, we have to be careful of wearable devices and pigeons.
And pandas are amazing. I mean, we talked about two very polar opposite topics today. Pandas and, the upcoming tech apocalypse. I don't know how to put it.
Sure, yeah. That's right.
Yeah, it's very loud. And that's why I always look forward to our chats, Simi. You always bring me down.
Sorry?
You always bring me down.
Why?
I'm so sad now about the upcoming tech apocalypse.
No, why? Just be wary of wearable devices and pigeons.
I'll just think of pandas and just be happy the entire day.
Cool, man.
That's all for today, folks. Thank you for listening in. Do subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google. See you soon.